I'm sorry, Connie said. I think I misunderstood you. You didn't say that you were going outside. You yourself told me that this Dogman used to do the exact same thing to the family who lived here before us. You said that it drug its claws across the house. Do you not think that's what it's doing now, and yet you two want to go outside with this thing? I know what I said to you about us being hunters, and we are, Mark, but we have to be smart about it. We will take this animal down, but loading up 2 small weapons and going out the door filled with anger, fear, and testosterone isn't smart. John and I looked at each other, both caught off guard by her tone. Well, yeah, we're going outside, I said, trying to match her intensity. We have to figure out what that sound is. We can only assume that's what it was, but we won't know for sure unless we go check. Connie couldn't believe what she was hearing. Look, I appreciate the stance you two are taking. You are the men and you want to make sure that me and Marie are okay. I get it, Mark, but you didn't see what I saw that night coming out of the woods. You didn't see what John and Marie saw in the woods during their encounter either. This creature is big and it's mean. It's not like any other animal we've seen or taken down in the woods before. This Dogman is not something that any weapon we have is going to take down. The only thing you're going to be successful at is making it even angrier than it already is. We are going to have to formulate a plan, all of us, together. I holstered my gun and motioned for John to do the same. If we walk out that door now, the Dogman would be the least of our worries. I can't lie, John started. I didn't really want to go out there and face that thing again. I just shook my head. I guess until I see this thing, I'm just not going to understand. Well, what do you propose we do then? I asked everyone. They all looked at each other and then looked back at me. Well, Marie spoke up, it's been quiet since that one sound. No movement, no more metallic scraping sounds, just the sounds of our voices talking. One thing I'm certain of, she continued, is that John and I are spending the night here. I am not walking out that door until the sun comes up. Connie reached out her hand for Marie's. Honey, you are both welcome to stay here anytime. She stood up from the table and walked into the linen closet to get some extra pillows, sheets, and a blanket. The couch has a pull-out bed in it, I said as I made my way into the living room to show them. It may not be the most comfortable, but for one night, it'll be fine. That'll be just fine, Mark. I appreciate yours and Connie's hospitality. I really do, John said as he shook my hand. Connie came in the room carrying 4 pillows, the sheets, and a large quilt. She began making up the pull-out bed for them while I showed them where the towels were in case they wanted to take a shower. We sat around that evening like a bunch of teenagers. We watched movies and had popcorn, and soon we all fell asleep. Connie woke me up a little after 3 in the morning to come to bed with her. I didn't even know she left the room. On our way to the bedroom, we heard a loud scream from outside. Connie turned around, eyes wide open, and whispered to me, "What the hell was that?" If I had to guess, I would say it was a bobcat, I said. We're in a new house, so we aren't too familiar with the noises that happen overnight, and honestly, we're never up at this hour. It could happen every night, and we just don't know it. I was trying to keep her calm. I can only hope that I was right about what I told her. Who's to say I'm not? This whole Dogman thing has everybody in an uproar, and every little thing that happens automatically is because of that. We just need to get back to normal somehow. The next morning, I woke up before everyone else. I made coffee and breakfast and set the table. 7 in the morning. That's lazy for me, John said, as he walked into the kitchen. I'm usually up no later than 5:30. Well, we were all up later than normal, and tensions were high, so I'll have to cut you some slack for that. Just as John sat down, Connie and Marie both walked into the kitchen at the same time. They both looked like they were still half asleep. I set the coffee and mugs on the kitchen table along with the food. I dreamed of that monster all night, Marie said. This is why I tried to convince myself it didn't exist all those years. John looked at me and then back at Marie. I knew what he was feeling. I felt like I had to be the leader in this charge because I felt more capable of carrying a level head in the situation since I had not had an encounter yet. Well, unless you want to count me almost hitting it with my car, that is. But it wasn't a good enough sighting to scare the wits out of me like it had everyone else. I'm going outside, Mark, if you want to join me, John said after breakfast had been cleaned up. I know I've seen these things in the daytime, just as Marie has, but I'm not going to be afraid to leave your house or mine. Connie and Marie put up less of a fight today than they had last night. John and I cautiously walked outside, our heads on a swivel. It had to come from our back lot, I said. These woods you see to the side really don't have much depth to them, before it's just trees and a steep cliff. I wouldn't even call them woods. However, Connie said she saw it coming out of the woods, and this would have to be where she saw it. No wonder she was blaring the horn. That was a close sighting of this thing. I never doubted my wife, but until you're in the position that the person is when they're telling you about it, you can't really appreciate it. This is also the side that the guy had to paint before they could sell the house. It had long scratches down and across the aluminum over here, John said as he was pointing. We walked to the side of the house where we had heard the metallic scraping sound coming from. It was the same side that John was talking about. I fully expected to see large scratches in the aluminum that I would have to prime and paint from the sounds of it, possibly replace altogether. But there was nothing. Not a mark. Nothing to be found anywhere. We went all around the perimeter of our house. There wasn't any evidence of any damage whatsoever. John and I just looked at each other in bewilderment. That makes no sense. You were here. You heard it too. How can something that was so loud, that could have only been something dragging their nails across the aluminum, have not left a mark? I asked John. Your guess is as good as mine. I have no explanation for that one, he replied in shock. We started walking towards the furthest part of our back lot. We were looking for anything at this point. John and I split up in hopes to better our chances. There were some areas in the back where you could go into a shallow portion of the woods. It was all grown up, however, and no human could get through there. Connie and I ventured back there when we were getting everything set up for the chickens in our gardens. There were briar bushes back there as tall as we are. That's of course not saying something like a Dogman couldn't get through there. I'm assuming just like a Bigfoot, they go through all kinds of things and it just doesn't bother them. So maybe whatever this was did come from back there. Either way, it still didn't explain the sound we all heard last night. 2 and 2 are not equaling up to 4 here, and I don't like it at all. We don't have neighbors near us. We're not near any highways or any machinery plants. Something was on our property last night. I don't believe in coincidences. And I totally believe that whatever almost hit my truck and this strange sound were somehow connected. I just have to prove it. Connie and Marie met us in the backyard, and I explained to both of them that the house had no damage on it at all. They were also shocked based on that sound. Connie and Marie started looking at the woods where we stood. Connie saw it first and gasped. Well, you got it right, Mark. It was a bobcat, she said, looking over at me while pointing to the wood line. This bobcat lay on the ground, surrounded by waist-high briars and bushes, and me and John had completely missed it. I pushed the briars back as far as possible to take a closer look. This thing had been mauled, but eerily enough, the look that was frozen on its face was one of terror and shock, almost like it was caught off guard. Is there such a thing in the animal world where these things have this look on their face when they're attacked? That I don't know for sure, but this bobcat sure did appear that it had been ambushed. We have to bury it, Marie said. If not, you guys are going to have an even bigger problem. John chuckled, trying to lighten the mood. Bigger than Dogman? Luckily, I'd left my post hole diggers out there, so we buried the bobcat before making our way back to the house to prevent other critters from making a meal of it. Well, I feel like we've overstayed our welcome at this point, John said. Marie and I need to get back home and tend to our animals. No doubt they're raising Cain wanting something. After gathering all their things from inside, Connie gave Marie a hug. You guys are welcome here anytime, you know that. If we're having to go through this, at least we're all experiencing it together. We watched them from the front doors as they walked past our cars to get to theirs. But they stopped suddenly, turned back around to face us at the front door. They motioned for us to come outside, so we walked out to see what the problem was. There on my truck were scratches all the way from the hood to the back bumper on the driver's side. Damn it, really? My truck? I said angrily. My truck was an older model, one I used for hauling farm equipment and whatnot. None of this plastic and aluminum stuff these newer models are made of. It was a battle axe I'd had for years. Connie rubbed my back. I'm so sorry. I know you love that truck. Luckily, if there is a luckily here, it's only scratches and nothing worse. She always had a positive side, but I was not in the mood for that right now. I was mad. I didn't care if it was only minor damage. The fact that there was any damage was enough. That finding did make sense, though. My truck was sitting on the same side of the house that we'd heard the sound coming from the night before. But what magnified the sound so much in our house? It was like the nails on a chalkboard sound. I would think that if it was just scratching my truck, it wouldn't have made enough noise for us to hear it. Nonetheless, it was an answer, but an answer that brought even more questions. After seeing what happened to that bobcat, Connie and I got straight to work beefing up our animal housing. I can't say for sure if Dogman was responsible. We're in the woods. It could have been anything. But we wanted to make sure that whatever did that to the bobcat didn't have a chance to do that to our livestock. Our property was coming along, and the day finally came for cows, chickens, and pigs to be delivered. John and Marie had come over to help us to get everything in place. Seeing as how we were sharing the land with some sort of cryptid devil, hunting would be limited for the time being, at least on our land. John had given Connie and I permission to hunt on his property, so that's what we did. For some reason, the brunt of our incidences were happening at our place. We still had to figure out why. That's where the pigs came into play. If John and Marie had no children, no dogs, just cows and chickens, but were having no activity to catch this Dogman, we were going to have to throw in something to really entice it. This thing toys with you. I know that at any point it's large enough and strong enough to attack us at any minute, yet it doesn't. The only thing that clicks when we talk about it is that this is where it has a home, assuming that it has one. It sees this place as its primary territory, and Connie and I are living right at the heart of it. We all sat at the table at John and Marie's and came up with a plan. Well, as much of one as we could make. I don't feel like this thing is otherworldly or paranormal by any means, John said. I've started doing some research on them, and they're everywhere. I've listened to encounter after encounter, and they all match for the most part. The one thing that's common in almost every story I've heard is that they're just like any other living, breathing animal. They all need shelter, food, and water. On your property, it has all of that. You guys experienced it at the water that day. There alone, it has two things it needs, food and water. You know you have deer and other small game there as well. Connie smiled a devious smile. We need to find out where it lays its head. I have some small animal calls that I used to hunt, I said. Why don't we use that to call it in? That's going to get it here quicker. Right, I'm sure it will, Marie spoke up. But it still isn't going to help you locate where its den is. You'll be drawing it out, but that won't help in the long run. I don't know, Marie. Maybe since this Dogman came out during the day as well, we can distract it. We can have one of us at the wood line at the house and the other person making the calls. If this Dogman is primarily a canine and an apex predator, the hearing on this thing must be top-notch. If someone's here in the cornfield making animal calls, it will be safer for the other person to go looking for some sort of cave or large hole or something for it to sleep in, John said. I guess, Marie said hesitantly. But is that actually safe? Me and John made eye contact at that point. We knew that it would be dangerous and someone could get hurt. But we didn't want to share that with Connie and Marie. Connie had the mind of a hunter. Her goal was to take this thing down, whatever it took. But would she be willing to sacrifice me or John in the process? No, she wouldn't. But he and I both knew that this would be our best shot at taking care of this problem. Well, we hoped so anyway. To make this easier, I have several walkie-talkies we can use to communicate. Since John knows these woods better than Connie and I, he can be the one to go in and do the search while I hide in the cornfield and make the sound of an injured animal. When I hear something coming in my direction, I will radio him and let him know it's okay for him to go in. I don't know, guys, Marie went on. This seems like it's too much. I can't believe we're sitting here formulating a plan to do something like this. I just feel like we're putting too much at risk. John reached over and grabbed her hand. Look, we've hunted all of our lives. They've already struck this thing's curiosity even more so by bringing in these pigs. Probably something that's never been here before. That's going to keep it on its toes. I wouldn't agree with something like this if I didn't believe it was absolutely necessary. And wouldn't you want something done if you always had to worry about your home, the lives of your animals, and most importantly, the safety of you and your loved one? I guess you're right, she conceded. Just be safe, John. That's all I ask. If you feel you're getting in too deep, get out of those woods. John smiled. Deal. The next couple of weeks, Connie and I observed all of our animals closely. Something was definitely stirring them up. They always acted different when a predator was around, so we could always pinpoint the exact times this happened every day to get a handle on when to put our plan into action. Luckily, nothing had been able to get to them. Again, the mindset of how these things toy with you. Connie and I also set up motion detectors at the back of the house just as an extra layer of protection. Bright halogen lights would come on with any movement from the wood line. The first time they went off, we ran to the window at the back of the house to hopefully see what it was. Nothing but a raccoon. But it did let us know how sensitive the lights were, and we got to see how much light they gave off when they came on. We all met over at John and Marie's early and went over what we had observed. We explained that the only thing that had tripped our motion detectors were small animals at night when it was completely dark. But we had noticed that every day around dusk, probably around 5 or a little after, all of our livestock got really worked up. These long summer days plays in our favor because it keeps John out of the woods alone at night, Connie said. We looked like infantrymen getting ready for battle. I had my hunting gear on, rifle on my back, and my walkie-talkie in my hand. I grabbed my injured deer call on the way out the door. John met me outside, and I found that he too was dressed for war. It almost felt like we were kids again, trying to ambush the neighborhood bullies. Honestly, though, I was still having a hard time wrapping my mind around all of this. All I had to go on was the words from my wife and our dear friends as to what we were even dealing with. I still hadn't fully laid my eyes on it. Part of me wanted to see it, while the other part of me didn't, based on everybody's description and hearing how it affected people after they saw it. I certainly didn't want to have a fear of the woods. It was my life. The entrance to the woods is about 2 miles from our house, John. It's 5 miles from our house to yours. Based on the size of this, however, I don't think it would take it very long to get from here to there. I'll hit you up on the walkie-talkie when I'm in the cornfield and when I make my first call. I'm not sure if you'll be able to hear it from where you are, so let's keep open communication at all times so we're all on the same page, I told him. Just then, Connie queued up her walkie and said, "Hey, are you guys ready to do this?" "As ready as we'll ever be, Connie," I said back to her. She and Marie were inside, keeping an eye out the back window, hoping to see this thing tear through the woods along the wood line to give us a heads up and to let John know when to go in. "You're going to have to be quick, Mark," Connie said the night before while we were going over the plan. "This has speed like you won't believe. Once it hears that call, it's going to be coming for you full force, and it won't stop. Once I signal you, you must be able to get back to your truck in time." Marie had given John the same speech. I get it, though. He and I were facing the same amount of danger. If we're being honest here, him more than me. He's going to look for this thing's den. Who knows what he might find? I brought some pig's blood from the butcher to spread across the section of the cornfield to hopefully give me enough time to get away and to keep it occupied while I tried to get to John. With the girls in position inside and John in his truck at the entrance of the woods at the dead end, I made my way to their house. My heart was pounding and my adrenaline was raging through my system. I started having doubts creep in as I drove. What if this doesn't work? What if it makes the situation at home worse than it is? That was my worst fear. What if we have to move to finally get away from this monster? I quickly dismissed all of my doubts. I also tried to think of everything my grandpa would say if he were here. He would tell me I have to stand up for my family and our home. Remember, these things only show themselves to people who want to see them. No fear, son. Get this son of a bitch. I had all I needed then. All my doubts erased and a new air of confidence instilled. I got to their farm and walked them to let them know I was walking to make my way into position. I grabbed the pig's blood out of the back of the truck and made my way to the right corner of the cornfield. I was in just far enough not to be seen, but not too far in where I wouldn't be able to make my way out. I spread the blood around in a circle about 50 feet from where I would be positioned, still way too close for comfort in my opinion. Nonetheless, it was time. Making my first call now, I told everyone. It was so quiet it was almost deafening at this point. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. That would play in my favor, however. Most anything should be able to hear this. I cupped the call to my mouth and I gave 3 to 4 calls, each with different intensities. Then I waited. It seemed like forever sitting in the cornfield, surrounded by blood and nothingness, while I waited for a ferocious beast to break through. "Run, run, run," Connie yelled over the walkie. "It's coming, Mark. We saw it and it's quickly headed your way. Please hurry." John took that as his cue and he ran as fast and as hard as he could into the woods, tearing through briars and thick brush, searching for anything that resembled an opening or a cave. He remembered going through that area with his old neighbor. Just over the ridgeline and out of breath, he saw it. A very large cave. This must be it. "I found it," he yelled into the walkie, trying to catch his breath. "That has to be it. It's huge." I was running as hard and as fast as I ever had before. I was too winded to reply to John, and I was hoping that either Connie or Marie would answer. My lungs burned with every breath I took, and fear was beginning to overtake me. I could feel tears welling up in my eyes, and that's when I heard it. A low, long growl approaching. I'd made it almost out of the cornfield. I was home free. Then I fell with a hard thud, and I dropped my walkie. This thing was inching further into the corn. I could hear its thrashing. No doubt it found the blood by now. I didn't have time to look for the walkie at this point. I scrambled up as fast as I could and made a beeline for my truck. I threw it in reverse, spinning gravel and making a large dust cloud, and I hauled ass out of there. "Mark, come in. Are you out of there yet?" Connie pleaded into her walkie. Radio silence. Marie was pacing the floor and praying. I knew this was a bad idea. I just knew it. Connie paid her no mind. Mark, answer me. Are you okay? John could hear everything that was going on, and he was trying to reach Mark as well. Just then, John saw the movement in the cave. There's more than one, he exclaimed. He was immediately on the walkie to whoever would listen. Guys, we have a problem. Just then, the transmission became garbled and broke up. Silence. Now both Connie and Marie were frantic. John, what's the problem? You broke up. Can you repeat? Connie asked. There's more than one of these things, he said fearfully into the mic. We screwed up. We weren't prepared enough for this. Connie pleaded into the walkie again. Mark, please answer me. I slid into the grass into the front of our house and ran inside. I must have looked like a maniac at that point. Mark, you're alive, Connie yelled. She threw her arms around my neck and cried. Look, I love you too, but we've got to get to John. I dropped my walkie in the cornfield when I fell. Where's John? Have you heard anything from him? I was spitting out my questions left and right. My adrenaline was at an all-time high, and I just wanted to get to my friend. Connie's face changed in an instant. He found the cave of the Dogman, but there's a problem. A big one, she said. What's the problem? I was almost frantic. Suddenly, a noise crackled out of the walkie. If you can still hear me, I'm hunkering down here. They spotted me. I could really use some help up here. Has anyone heard from Mark yet? I grabbed the walkie from Connie. I'm here, buddy. Where are you at? Mark, thank God you're okay. It's a big cave, but there's more than one. I need your help, he said. I'm coming, but you have to tell me where, John. Where are you? I'm at the top of the ridge. His walkie had gone out again. I queued up my walkie again. At the top of what, John? You cut out. They're coming. The ridge line. Hurry. Then his transmission went silent.